ever thought a thought that you don't really want to think about, but your brain repeatedly thought about that and you couldn't stop yourself from thinking about that specific thought? And yes, I tried to put as many thoughts in one sentence as I could. I couldn't do more than that. I tried. Anyways, intrusive thinking, intrusive thoughts. That's the topic of today's video, and it is a part of my playlist. Interesting topics. That's the name of the playlist. Intrusive thinking. That's what we are talking about today. Let's go. But obviously, before we begin, I have to tell you that this is Yury Experience, and here I share my various experiences about different topics. I currently do one piece of content per week, and if you enjoyed this piece of content, please drop a like, subscribe to the channel, do whatever is possible on the platform of your choice. Let's go. We start with the definition. With my own words, intrusive thoughts are thoughts that you don't want to have, so they are not really conscious decisions. That's what brain decides to think about it, and that can be thoughts, images, whatever that upset you a little bit, that are not welcomed by you and by your consciousness. A lot of the thoughts go against our character, go against how we actually think, how we make decisions. These are thoughts that we don't expect us to have, but still somehow they appear in our consciousness. And that can lead to us being upset about these thoughts, that can lead to us being distressed, thinking, why do I have these thoughts? Am I a bad person because I have these thoughts? And small spoiler, no, you are not. But first, let us cover a couple of types of intrusive thoughts, and we start with first one: violence or harm to other people, to other beings, or to yourself. And it can be something active. So for example, you are driving a car and you are thinking, or you have this thought, it would be interesting now to drive fully into the wall or into the tree. Or you are driving and you are seeing people on the bus station, for example, or bus stop, and you're thinking, oh, it would be nice to rotate the wheel a little bit to the right and take some people for a ride. Or another example, you go to a restaurant and you see people around there and one person coughed a little bit and you're starting to think, oh, that person is ill and I will become ill because of that person. You don't really have worries about that, but somehow that thought is in your head. You understand that this thought is not logical, it doesn't make sense, but you think about it. Another kind of intrusive thoughts are sexual thoughts. So you are thinking about some sexual interactions with people with whom you wouldn't do it normally. For example, incest thoughts. For example, if you have a partner, to have some sexual interaction not with your partner, although you discussed polygamy and it is not something for your relationship. Or maybe some paraphilias that you don't normally indulge into, but now you had this thought, maybe I could try it, or maybe I shall try it, and normally you wouldn't, and it's actually not your thing, and maybe it is also something crazy like necrophilia, but you are thinking, maybe, and that thought comes into your head for a second and then goes away. Or maybe that thought comes in your head and it rotates, it remains there, and you're thinking a couple of days later, maybe I could at least ask that person for a number who walked past me. Yes, I have a wife and children, but that person was kind of nice, and maybe I could try to have some sexual interaction with that person. And your whole consciousness tells you, no, you are not such type of a person, and you're actually pretty introvert as a person. You wouldn't even dare to ask that person because you are what you are. It's not a bad thing that you are introvert. You don't talk to other people easily. It is okay and fine, but this thought appears from nowhere. You love your partner, but that thought somehow is in your head. It feels almost like somebody else put the thought in your head, and that's what happens a lot for people who have religious intrusive thoughts. And some of these people are thinking, okay, that bad thought that I have in my head coming from the devil. To religious intrusive thoughts belongs something like cursing the God, or cursing the apostles, or maybe cursing the saints, or maybe wanting to have sexual interactions with some of these people or groups of beings. And some people starting to think the devil put these ideas in my head, and that's also, by the way, what makes it more difficult for these people to go to specialists and ask for treatment, because they think It's the problem of their trust, of their belief, but not the problem of their brain, basically. Another type that I will mention today, and by the way, the types that I mentioned today are not the only ones, and there are a hell lot of various possibilities what intrusive thoughts you can have. Anyways, the last types that I will mention today are various intrusive thoughts that are connected to your mental instability. For example, people with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, experience something and afterwards their life isn't the same, and based on that experience they have some triggers that lead to their intrusive thoughts. They know that the same situation cannot happen again logically, but maybe there were some cues in the past, in the previous situation, that brought you to this idea, maybe it will happen again, and that brings you to this idea, maybe this cue is important right now, and that brings you to this trauma, to experience that previous trauma again, because maybe that cue that I remember from that time is happening right now, and now you are experiencing the trauma again, and now you get even more stressed about that, and then repetitive thinking starts, and your mental health declines. And that can happen for various mental instabilities or mental disorders. There are various triggers that can sometimes influence intrusive thoughts. It's not always the case, sometimes they just happen, but sometimes there are triggers. One of the most important things that you need to comprehend, to understand, to feel basically, when you have intrusive thoughts is these things are just thoughts, only thoughts. There is not necessarily an interpretation behind it. There is not necessarily any connection to your actual life behind it. These things are just thoughts that appeared from nowhere, and that have no connection to you, to your personality, to your character, to your whatnot. And that brings already to one of the best ways to understand that this current thought is an intrusive thought and not your thought. It is not typical for you. It is something that you don't normally think about. It's not how you are. It's not a part of your character, but that thought appears. And you ask yourself, what happened? Why is the thought in my head? And normally, if it is the case, if you ask yourself why the hell was that thought there, then this thought wasn't yours, that was just an intrusive thought. And another point which is important here, you don't act on it. You don't act usually according to this thought, and you don't act on when this thought appeared, and you don't act like that at all in your life. So then that means that it is just in your head. It just exists in your head, and if you think about that, it's not even that important, and you can try to show it away. And what is also important to understand when you have intrusive thoughts is they don't describe what you can do or what you should do or what you have to do. These things are just thoughts. They don't describe you and how you deal with your life, how you act in your life with other people, with other beings. There's no connection, causational connection. You have the thought and then you deal like that, or you act like that. Normally, if you can stop yourself from dealing in that direction, if you don't deal like that normally, then you would not deal like that, or you will not act like that in the future or right now when this thought is in your head. You don't just strangely jump from one kind of behavior to another one just because you have one thought in your head, at least normally. And another point, these thoughts don't define you morally. They don't define whether you are good or a bad person. It is just a thought that appeared in your head, and normally the appearance of the thought is connected to safety. It is what your brain tries to tell you, please look in your environment and be careful about that or that. But it doesn't define you as a person. It doesn't define you being good, you being bad, you being whatnot. These thoughts don't define you because you don't normally have these thoughts. If you have a lot of thoughts like that, and if it is normal for you and you're not stressed about that, then that defines you. But if you have this strange thought out of nowhere and you feel yourself bad about this thought and you don't usually think like that, then obviously it is not your normal behavior. obviously doesn't define how you are and what you are. Which brings me to the fact intrusive thoughts are normal. Most of the people have them, and there are a couple of statistics that say that a lot of people have at least one thought in the last 3 months. I think there was one statistic that I read about that 93% of people who were asked during their statistic had one intrusive thought of some kind during the last 3 months. I mean, obviously at least one thought. So that brings me to the point, from time to time, all of us have it. Maybe you have some stressful period in your life, or maybe you have some troubles at work, and that leads to your brain being stressed and sending strange signals, and that leads to this one intrusive thought that you can't get rid of. And most of the suggestions in these cases are: please don't try to fight it, don't try to throw it out of your head, because that normally leads to your brain thinking, okay, if person fights it, then it is even more important to push it in your face. If you don't want to have it in your face, then I will make you see the thought. Which is why don't fight it, but acknowledge it, and also understand that it is an intrusive thought. It is not how you are. There's no causation that your character is ugly. That is why you have the thought. Accept the thought, analyze it, understand that it is not a part of who you are, and that will lead to you being able to get rid of the thought. If at least you don't usually have a lot of problems with these thoughts. If it is the case, if you struggle a lot about intrusive thinking, and there are a couple of mental disorders that are connected to intrusive thinking, please go to the specialist, talk to the specialist. Even if you have intrusive thoughts from time to time, but they bother you, go to the specialist, try to get a treatment. There are various treatments, both psychological and medical treatments, that can help you to deal with your brain basically, and can help you to get rid, or at least reduce, amount of intrusive thoughts, and what's more important, to learn how to deal with them. Because they will not go away just magically, just disappear. They will remain there, they will be there, but you will be able to deal with them better, which is basically more important in the long run. And one of the most important points here, and a lot of other videos where we are talking about health, physical health leads to mental health, and also less stressful life leads to mental health. Try to take care of yourself, go do some sports, eat proper foods, go to sleep at normal times and sleep enough, and that will help a lot your mental health too, and that also will lead to way less level of intrusive thoughts. I think that's it. As I said, that's pretty much it. If you enjoyed this piece of content, please drop a like. You can also subscribe to the channel. You can also leave a comment. And that's pretty much it. Have a good week. I see you next week, probably.